Hello, User Needs First. Thank you for having us in Amsterdam. And today we would like to take you on our journey on how we aim to make the German justice system more user-centered. And we brought a best practice on legal aid. And we would like to show you how we try to make the language more plain, how we managed to create a hybrid access to legal aid, and how we managed to let stakeholders participate in all these processes. And in case you have questions, please use the Yellench app. It's programmed, so you can just go to the program, drop your question, and we will answer it later or in the end of the session. This is us. This is Marlene. She's designer, and I'm Sonja. I'm a user researcher. And we are working for the DigitalService in Germany. We are federal government's central digitalization unit, so we are owned by the government, but working pretty independent. So this is why we can change things a little bit more faster than other institutions. And if you want to learn more about the digital service, there are more presentations today at 3 p.m. Our colleague Paul, who's also working with us on the Justice Project, is giving a talk about the triangle of success about paper forms. And at 4:30, our CPO, Stephanie, is giving a talk about the strategy of the digital service, change through delivery, and how we try to change government in Germany by delivering good services. But before we start, we would like to get to know you a little bit better. So the question is, which country do you work in? We initially checked the attendance list, and there were a lot of people from the Netherlands. So who's from the Netherlands?
Oh, wow.
Nice. There were also some people from the UK. Who's from the UK? A few, yes. Who's from Germany? Also a few, yeah. And there was also a person from Norway, I think. Nice.
Welcome.
And other countries?
Austria.
Australia. Austria. Okay.
Estonia.
Estonia.
Italy.
Italy, nice. Yeah. Belgium. Nice. Cool.
And there is someone else.
Oh,
The Latvia. Latvia.
ah, nice. Yeah. Yeah, you have a lot of best practices for us. Probably. And who works or has worked in the justice context? Oh, nice. We would be happy to talk to you afterwards to learn from your experiences, because first things first, in Germany, we are far behind in when it comes to digitalization in public services, and especially in the justice system. So most people are just used to use paper forms, and they just even don't expect to have an online service. They are surprised when they see there's an online service in the justice system. And sometimes if we look to Scandinavia or other countries, we think, okay, maybe we are even 10 years behind, and it feels like this. So this case study we brought is pretty far for Germany, but probably not so far for other countries. So of course we're happy to learn, and why this is like it is, Marlene will explain you a bit in the beginning.
I will say a few things about the justice system, or the digital justice system, especially in Germany, as things that we have learned, having worked in this field for 2.5 years now. First of all, Germany is a federal system. So we have federal states, and the justice system is a responsibility of the federal states, providing justice services. So for a lot of services, we really have 16 different ministries of justice who are responsible for delivering a service or for creating something. The overarching laws are created in Berlin, so centrally, but the federal ministries also have a lot of say in it and organize, and we try to have the courts self-organized, etc. This has a lot of advantages, like for example, in Niedersachsen, which is a very low density state, they have created a service telephone where people can just call and get information and get help via phone, and don't need to go to the court as frequently as often. But many things are also happening in parallel. So different organizations sometimes develop different solutions for similar problems. Like for example, to send digital data to a public entity, we have different services for that and different platforms for that. Or for identification, sometimes it's like state-owned, like for Bavaria, or for the entirety of Germany. And so this is a bit of a challenge sometimes. Some people or some entities do things very, very well in one place, so we can also learn from each other. But it's also challenging to keep just to keep an overview of all the things that are happening, because those 16 states then have different agencies they're working with and different entities that have been working on certain topics and in parallel. So it's a bit like a mini EU or something. There is another term that I need to introduce it to you, maybe if you aren't very familiar with the German justice system. This is the Legal Application Office, or Rechtsantragsstelle in German. It's a place, a physical space, most of all, in all the local courts in Germany. You can go there to apply for something. Go with different legal concerns, maybe very, very different concerns. Like in many states, this differs from state to state. You can go there to leave the church, for example. Or if you want to renounce an inheritance, this is a place to go and to talk to someone. Or I've actually encountered this. If you want your neighbor's dachshund off your area property, that's also a good place to go. Real people work in the application offices. So they called Rechtspfleger, or legal officers. They can help find the correct application. They can help getting all the data in, and also make small decisions. So they're a bit like small judges. It's like a how do you say, like a profession that was introduced, I think, in the 90s to kind of reduce the workload of judges. So they make things like inheritance decisions more easily. An applicant can get a right, a piece of paper, like a certificate or authorization, mostly in paper, like this one for legal aid, directly there. In our project, we want to empower citizens to easily find out about their rights and assert them digitally, so they don't have to go to these places as much anymore, or just in the cases where it's really, really necessary or really helpful to actually go to a place and speak to a real person. We started with our pilot of legal aid, or Beratungshilfe. It's a special form of legal aid in Germany. The legal aid system is a bit different than, for example, in Great Britain. It's the assumption of legal fees for people with little money who have a legal problem outside court. This is specific. It's a complex but relatively standardized form that has been around for a couple of years, like this. There's a high number of applications every year, and it's really at the core of access to justice, because people who apply for legal aid because they have little money are more than 3 times as frequently, for example, non-German native speakers. So they don't understand German as well, and especially legalese German, which is another level. With little income often comes more limited access to technical devices, and also lower digital competencies in many cases. There's a higher personal risk. If you get in trouble with your landlord, it's much riskier to get into a fight, into court, if you can't afford a new apartment, than if you could just change apartments. So for these people, it's very, very risky a lot of the time to actually get active and do something legally. And there's also many age-related illnesses and disabilities that are more frequent in our user audience or target audience. Many processes are still largely paper-based in Germany, so we've seen a lot of places with that look like this on our research. It's actually improving really, really fast. So I'm very happy to see this. Also in the 2 years that we've been working in the field, it's becoming more and more digital, but this still exists, and it's a lot of paper that needs to be digitalized, to be very honest, I think. To give you some numbers, we have more than 600 local courts all over Germany in those 16 different states. In 2020, there have been more than 400,000 applications for legal aid or Beratungshilfe, and more than half of those were submitted in paper form. And the others either came orally, vocally, or through a lawyer, but there was no digital form then. The digitalization is rather fragmented, so the courts are responsible for what is being digitalized, in what order the states are responsible, and how exactly it's being done is often up to the court. So many courts have their website where they link to different digital or services, and have their individual like appointment booking system. So it's a lot of things that are done state by state or even court by court. Also, we found that the forms are developed rather top-down. So this is the form for legal aid. And it's usually developed by, or this one has been developed by the Bund, so by the government and the Ministry of Justice in Berlin, together with those 16 ministries of justice. So there was a lot of stakeholders already involved there. And it's all law people, so there is no process of user testing or of testing this with real people. That wasn't really thought of. It's really rarely done, and there's very little room for that. In the case of legal aid, we learned that there is an error rate of 90%, surprisingly, because people don't really understand this form when we talk to our partner courts. And this number actually opened our door to speak to the department then later on. This was super, super helpful. And yeah, some things grew from that. And so what we've been working on now over the past 2 years is we've created some info page on Beratungshilfe, or this type of legal aid, an eligibility check where you can find out if you actually probably get legal aid or not. Then an online assistant to complete the form for legal aid that right now only generates a PDF that you can then print or send via one of those complex solutions to a court. And then we've also created an overarching start page for different services and entry point. And we're also working on the paper form right now together with the Ministry of Justice. So to also change some of the underlying laws and concepts of Beratungshilfe or legal aid. This is because we try to follow the strategy to really go in small steps, baby steps, and learn on the way. So the first thing we launched was just the eligibility checker with an info page to have better prepared applications. So we actually heard from our pilot courts that people came more informed to the courts. They knew which documents to bring and if they were likely to get legal aid or not, and what to do to get it. With just this assistant to fill in the PDF, we actually have much more legible PDFs because reading hand, probably this is very far in the past for you, but we actually have trouble with reading handwriting in German courts right now. It's a big issue because if you get handwritten forms, then it's difficult to process and to understand. So just to have them in machine readable or written form is really, really helpful. And also the PDFs we fill in are more correct because we ask in different ways for the answers. So yeah, Sonja will talk about it, but it's been helpful to our partners. And right now we're actually working on the magic of identification and submitting digitally forms to courts in an easy to understand, manageable way within our system, hopefully, to then later also allow for return communication. So this is something we also hear a lot that people are struggling with. They've sent an application and sometimes they wait up to a month for an answer and don't know what's happening. It's like sending it into the ether and not knowing. To help people find a resolution to whatever they want to do legally. That's our mission, our vision. And this is how exactly we're doing this. Sonja is going to speak about more.
Thank you, Marlene. Yeah, how did we get here that we finally had a solution which is more digitally? Our goal in this project is, besides delivering these online service, to really modernize the German justice system, and this together with the federal government and also the federal states, with support of all the local levels like pilot courts. And as Marlene already mentioned, there are lots of people to be involved. We deal with far more than 100 stakeholders, like on a regular base. And we think that collaboration can only work if all these levels are involved into the whole process. And for this, our transformation manager, Caro, she's not here today, unfortunately, but shout out to her. She developed this model, and we call it the onion, to structure like communication and how to involve these different levels into the process to get the mandate to work on these difficult topics, different topics. In the core, we have the Ministry of Justice and us, the digital service. We are responsible for really building the service and the product. But we, on the other hand, have like 10 partner states. So 10 partner states committed to be part of this project. And with them, we are aligning on overarching topics. What topics we need to work on and so on. And they are responsible, or were responsible, to define the pilot courts. So in every state we have like different courts we are working with. And the thing is that the Ministry of Justice is not allowed to talk to the pilot courts without getting in touch with the partner states before, because this would like be an overstep of hierarchy. And so this was really important for us to get like everybody on board to be able to really talk to the pilot courts, because this is the level where we can work user-centered. We need to talk to real users. We need to talk to the Rechtspfleger, the justice officers, to understand their problems and to understand how this is working. And this cannot happen like on a very high level. And this also helped us to create like small expert groups. I will talk about this a little bit more later, which are helping us to really work on concrete problems. And one thing, what was really, really helpful for us was in the beginning to get a commitment from especially the pilot courts, save like 4 hours per month to work with us. So they got from their boss, they got, the commitment to really block this time in their calendar to work with us. Because otherwise the people have a lot of work and they have a lot of important work. We don't want to interrupt them, right? But when they blocked these 4 hours per month, they could decide on which topic they want to work with us. So we invented different formats up front and let them know these are different formats we have. How would you like to participate, and how would you like to work with us? So we have every quarterly, so every 3 or 4 months, we have an update session. It's a quarterly project update. So everybody is just invited. And this is like 60 to 90 minutes where we only explain what we are doing in the project. So everybody is updated and everybody knows what happened in the past and what we are going to work with. So to be fully transparent. Then we have the court visits. We already talked about this, and this is a key format for us, because this is the format where we take the people from the Ministry of Justice and from the partner states together with us to the pilot courts, and there talk to users, so I mean citizens who are in the situation to apply for Beratungshilfe, and we can observe legal officers, how are they dealing with the problems, to do really the shadowing, and get like first-hand experience, and also convince people from the ministry to understand what's happening on the ground, right? Then we have the expert groups. These are groups like 4 to 5 legal officers, and they're getting together on a regular basis, like every 2 weeks or monthly, and working on expert topics. So defining defining or reviewing our content and things like this. Marlene will talk about this a little bit more later. Then we have special topic workshops where we invite like all levels to discuss one specific topic. By example, we'll talk about this also later, like the measurement framework or the success measurement framework. This is what we aligned all together on, or how to work with the service standard. And the last thing is test in real environment. When we launched the first eligibility check or now the application, we are asking the pilot courts to give us feedback how this is working when they link to our service, if they get feedback from the users. They also fill out surveys for us so we can understand how it's working. And all of you probably know the double diamond and even the triple diamond approach, but we used it for communication in this project to make sure everybody in the team knows in which phase we are and what we are currently working on, and to not question everything we are doing. And of course, we started with a problem space, and this was really crucial for us to really don't overstep this phase, because often it's the case that people coming up with a solution, please digitalize Beratungshilfe. And then we need to convince them, okay, but before we're digitalizing it, we would like to really understand the user needs, and we really want to understand the problem which is occurring there. So we really want to do things right. And of course, stepping into the solution space, all the colors are, I don't know, it's just my view. This is the phase where we adapted it from like the ideation phase to really getting into a co-creation phase, to co-create together with the legal officers on the solution and to test it in context and do legal checks. So we need to be sure that we are legally compliant and the content on our online service is legally compliant. We cannot just give some information. And after launch, of course, we get into the evolution space where we monitor and optimize. We defined the success measurement framework to have a look on what kind of KPIs are important for us and which KPIs we really want to work on our service performance indicators. And of course, there's the small diamond in the end. This is like very iteratively. There are hundreds of iterations we are working on. And now we want to explain how we really put this into practice. We gave already some ideas. So in the first phase, we really went to, I think, more than 10 pilot courts. Not only the two of us, the whole team was involved, and even the people from the Ministry of Justice, to shadow situations in the pilot courts. So we were with the legal officers, like an intern. We called ourselves interns, and just sitting in the back and observing what they are doing and how they are working. We did a lot of interviews, talking to users, and learned a lot along this way.
Like for example, the so-called Angelegenheitsbeschreibung or the legal issue that is being asked for in the paper form. We saw that this field A is almost never filled in correctly in the paper form. This is because here it's asking, I am applying for Beratungshilfe in the following case. Please describe case briefly. That's all that it's asking. And almost every applicant who writes this then gets a so-called Zwischenverfügung, or a letter stating what is missing in language that isn't always very plain. It really depends on the legal officer who's writing it, but very frequently these are very, very difficult to understand. And there's different things in there. For example, the proof of your own effort, like you should have written what you have done to solve this thing, and it's not even asked for in the form. Or the legal problem isn't apparent, and it's not asking for the legal problem either, and what is a legal problem. So it's a lot of things that are like not plain at all. The matter is not named. How are you supposed to name a matter? And looking at how these forms are filled, sometimes it's people who can, like you see in the writing, that people can hardly write. Like looking at the audience who's actually filling in these things, there's like a massive clash between how this is done and how real people react to it. So that was painful to watch, and also to watch in the application office. And Sonja saying something about this.
As I already mentioned, we went to this legal application office and we're sitting in the back as an intern and observing the situation in there. We really learned a lot and learned how the justice officers are asking the questions. So they were asking, what happened? What do you want to achieve? What have you done so far? And they were creating like specific follow-up questions to get the answers they need to make a decision on this application. And based on this, we of course derived like the different user profiles to understand what kind of different users we have, even in the application Beratungshilfe applicants, because there are people who don't speak German, there are people with a lot of other barriers, which helped us to really focus on also an inclusive approach, and also derived like all the user needs along the journey. There was also support from the UK justice team who gave us their user needs list, which was very helpful. And in the end, there was a really concrete problem statement, which we have never get to if we wouldn't have done the first step, the shadowing and the observation, because in this phase we understood that the relevant information is not requested on the paper form. So when people are filling out the paper form, the questions or the answers the justice officers need to make a decision were not requested. So they got like totally different information than they need to work on this, to really make a decision. And this is why the process got very long, and people were waiting like for 4 or 6 weeks or months even to get their legal aid paper, to go to a lawyer to get like legal support, and then it was too late. People lost their flats. This is like a real problem, a real world problem, right? And if the process is too long, we cannot provide access to justice. So we need to shorten this process.
Yeah. So we really learned like this: the paper form isn't working, and just digitalizing the paper form isn't going to be the solution for our problem, or for what we should be doing. So what we started was then to go into co-creation with our experts, with legal officers from different places, and for example makes decision trees, like in what cases do you ask what kind of follow-up questions, and how do you proceed from there. And it was very interesting to see like what patterns emerged if we talk to different officers from different courts, because some of them like handle things very differently, and that was very insightful to see. And we also used this expert group then to share wireframes with them, and to co-create like phrasing of questions, like what experience do they have in phrasing the questions, so that real people can actually understand them, and what what do they do, what kind of problems occur there frequently that we need to allude to, what type of misunderstandings. And yeah, this is what we did. And actually just doing it in Miro was super helpful for us to have with the experts, because they were busy in their everyday life and could just asynchronously feedback us. This was super helpful. And then we did a lot of in-context testing as well when we went to the pilot courts.
Yeah, and we did it very iteratively. So in the beginning, we were testing like very rough prototypes, and later on also some coded prototypes. And this is an example from Bochum. That's in North Rhine-Westphalia, next to the Netherlands. And this was a special case because the court is offering slots which you can book to make the application orally. And we just went there and knew they're booked like 25 slots in 2 days. And we just asked the citizens before going to the legal officer if they would take some time to test the prototype with us. And the court provided us an extra room for this. So we could go to the extra room with the citizens, let them fill out the application form, and then we printed out the PDF and handed it over to the legal officer and asked him, how would you decide on this application, to understand if all information are filled in correctly, if some information are missing. And then we let the citizens go into the office of the justice officer to let answer the last questions and hand out the paper so they can go to the lawyer. And this helped us really, really to work like kind of a natural fallout system. In research, we are talking about this when we just talk to people who naturally are in the situation. And then we also, because usually in research, we recruit users via agencies and we define some criteria and then we hand it over to the agency and people are coming to the interviews. But in this case, the agencies couldn't help us because they usually have like people who are financially strong in their panel. And this user group is just not there. So we had a lot of people with visual impairments, with cognitive impairments in the interviews, not native German speakers, and just got some really, really funny situations as well. Or not funny at all, but there was one situation I'm always taking this example because in one situation we had the person was filling their bank amount, how much they have on their bank account. And we realized we forgot to program it, that there's also a negative balance possible. And this is like, of course, we are in a very privileged situation, and it was just so the reality check that this is really important. And of course, this was a prototype; it was very fast, but to get into the situation is so important, and to show it to everybody, to the engineers and everyone. Yeah. This is an example from the very first prototype, an outcome of the expert group, where the idea was, if we have this logic tree, and then there people fill in their category where they have their legal problem, so then specific questions can be asked afterwards, very, very context specific.
And be co-created.
Yeah, it's co-created, exactly. And the legal officer said, oh, these categories makes a lot of sense, but in the testing, we learned that 4 out of 5 applicants could not assign their problem and afterwards did not get their specific questions.
Yeah. So that was a bit sad for the designers, especially for the designers and all of us who had created these like elaborate logic trees. But yeah, what we did then was to first of all give more context on the different answers. So give more examples to the categories and explain what it means in more and more plain language. So this is something we keep iterating on, like how do we get these better so that more and more people can actually answer the question of what category is their legal case and their issue. And then we skipped the rest of the logic tree for now, and went to open text fields, but also asking questions now, like who do you have the legal issue with, and what exactly happened, and what do you wish to accomplish by talking to a lawyer, etc. So asking more elaborate questions. And yeah, these answers are, it's much easier to answer for the applicants. This is something we see over and over again. Some issues, of course, are still difficult, like how exactly do I phrase this in my specific case? So we have started giving examples here and keep iterating, but it's getting better. And also, when we then hand the legal issue now to our expert group, this is again something we do on Miro. So we put the filled in applications on a Miro board and ask our expert panel to decide if they would approve this case, which would be a green post-it. If they say no, which is a pink post-it, or if they say yellow, which is, I need to have some follow-up questions. So the so-called Zwischenverfügung. It's also really interesting to see because sometimes they decide differently. Or a lot of the time they decide differently, and some have follow-up questions, others have really other follow-up questions. So it's not the same at all everywhere. It leads to interesting discussions between them, but the overall picture we get is that it's much clearer and much easier to make a decision based on how we fill in the form than it was before. And yeah, we also got some positive feedback from legal officers in practice who weren't involved in creating this, which was very nice when we tested it again with this. And how exactly we test and measure our success is something Sonja will talk about again.
Yeah. So finally, we launched this online service so people can fill in the form digitally. And in the meantime, we, or parallel to the discovery, we worked on the success measurement framework to be ready when we launch, to really have it in place and to understand what kind of KPIs we need to measure. And we used the North Star metric framework in the beginning, which says there is one big star we want to work on. And this was connected to our vision to make applications so easy. That's the new standard, or online applications. Of course, our goal is not to get all people into the online application, because some people have the need to do the oral application because it's a complicated case or whatever. But the idea is to make it so easy that people want to use the online version. So we decided to, on the digital take-up, this is a metric we stole from the UK and I think other governments already. So thank you for all the previous work. We really liked it and just copied it. And then we just followed the user journey to define in each phase which KPIs make sense for us to track. So as mentioned in the beginning, become aware. There's a phase in Germany which is really important because people even don't expect there's an online service. So they just go to the court, and after they realize there's an online service, they're really happy about it. So this is where our growth manager especially did a lot of work in talking to the courts, so they link our service on their homepage, on their website, and this was, we were tracking how this was raising. And then the phase inform and orientate, the eligibility check, like Marlene mentioned, we went like in baby steps, and then we launched the eligibility check, which where we had the goal that people who are not eligible to apply for Beratungshilfe even don't send the application to the court, to minimize the work on the side of the court. So we're checking if this was helpful for the people and asking them, is this helpful? And one core phase for us or for our project is to submit the application. So we want to understand, how is the conversion? Are people dropping out? Is the application helpful for them? Because we use another question technique. And all these three phases are aiming for simplifying access to justice for the people. And this is something we can track via classical analytics tools. We are using Posthoc for this and implementing it. So we can track just the standard analytical things. Most people are filling out the PDF and get the PDF, download it, and either send it via post, handed it personally at the court, or use the very complicated way to hand it over digitally. So we don't know how many of the forms which are filled in on our side really got their way to the court. So this is something, because there's no connection, but we need these numbers to understand if the outcome was really good and if the quality was good and the legal officers can make a decision. So this is also a very important phase for us to understand if the quality is good, if we're reducing the so-called Zwischenverfügung, the error rates, if they can make a decision very fast on it, to really relieve the judiciary. And of course, our project is under the umbrella Access to Justice. We also want to understand if citizens receive their legal advice in the end, and if their problem could get solved. And this is something totally out of our scope. We just don't have the information. So currently we're working on a survey which will be sent to the citizens 4 weeks after using our online service to understand, did they find a lawyer? Was their problem solved? Because it's really hard to track, and it's really difficult to track and understand if this is supporting access to justice, because it's such a small thing. And yeah. As mentioned in the beginning, this was co-created with legal officers and also with the partner states and the people from the Ministry of Justice. So this is nothing we just invented in our project team and at DigitalService, but we involved all the stakeholders and let them participate. And during these co-creation sessions, which was implicit, visible already during the shadowing sessions, we learned about the Zwischenverfügung, but this co-creation sessions helped us to really make this visible, that this Zwischenverfügung are really a core error topic we need to work on, and they're really crucial. We started to implementing it, defining like gold signal metrics along this whole journey. As mentioned, our product manager implemented everything in post-hoc on our service. We're sending the survey monthly to our courts and ask them, how many applications did you get, which were filled in with our online service. There's like a watermark on the side, so they can see which came via our service. So we get an understanding how many were filled in, how was the quality. We're asking them on the side, on different touch points, was this helpful? So on the content sides, on the eligibility check and so on. Tracking the qualitative comments and analyzing it to implement it. And we got a new researcher on our team who is really good in creating dashboards and automatization processes. And he created this wonderful dashboard for us where we can like simultaneously track how the framework is evolving, and we can evolve and optimize it. And the first data after, I would say, 8 months now, are showing the error rate of applications dropped compared to paper forms. So legal officers need to work on less Zwischenverfügung when they get the online application instead of the paper form. So, and this is a big success for us. But of course, the data is small, and we have small data and still observing it. And this gave us the mandate to grow in the future and work also on other topics. And Marlene will show you and talk a little bit more about this.
So we use this as a pilot to grow and try to expand what we are doing. So first of all, as I said before, we are working on more functionalities along the user journey. On the submission right now, for example, together with Fitco, and then hopefully someday soon the return communication and there's a lot of steps or microservices in between, like finding a court, etc., that keep coming up and that we also are improving. But in parallel to expanding the journey, along the journey, we're also working on different services. So we're increasing that. We're mainly working on, we're working on legal aid for one journey and try to fill that as much as possible. But we've also created an application for Prozesskosten. It's another form of legal aid. So there's a lot of similarities, but also certain things that are different. And so we could reuse some things, but needed to build on it. Also, the flow is quite different, or the the service flow, the service journey. We've also started working on foreclosure, and hopefully, if all goes well, we're going to launch first service in that area very, very soon, which will again be sort of like an eligibility checker, a wayfinder to find the right type of application to go for. And then there's various applications in this area that we can work on after that. And we're also exploring the topic of inheritance. So those are different life areas, problem areas that we're going into. And we hope to expand this further, to go both along the journey, but also into different services. One thing where we're growing, I think, qualitatively is in the definition of patterns and things that we can reuse. We're also taking a lot, like again, shout out to the Ministry of Justice in the UK, and especially to Carol and Josh, who gave us their list of user needs, which was super, super helpful as a base to, or as one data point into our user journey of overarching topics that we could use to validate what we had found, compare it, because surprisingly, user needs in legal aid are not super different from different countries in Europe. So we could really learn from there. We have derived a pattern for our so-called pillar pages where we explain in plain language what a service does and how one can use it. How exactly we use plain language, like how do we gender, etc. So those are all things that we define and reuse. We're working on our design system. Hopefully we will switch to CAN soon, which is like an overarching design system for Germany, the public administration that is being developed finally now, which is a really great movement, I think. And then we are discovering a couple of service patterns that are not completely new to the world, like eligibility checkers, but how exactly we're doing them, realizing them based on people's work is something we're defining at the moment. We are also learning a lot about how we do things, like, for example, how do we work with our expert groups? How do we work with all those different stakeholders? Like what tools and, I don't know, check-in exercises work really well, what procedures, or how do we recruit users for a panel. Because we have this difficult to find user group, we are recruiting a lot through our services or through our site, and iterating on that as well. We're also growing the onion in a way, in a qualitative way. We're experimenting with new project setups of how we collaborate within this onion model that Sonja showed earlier. Like for foreclosure, for example, we work directly with the team of the ministry that is responsible for all the laws in foreclosure. And the discovery, they worked a day in their week with us and went on all the visits. They went on a lot of user interviews with us and saw firsthand what the problems are in foreclosure. We did that for 8 weeks, and now we're really developing the solution together. So it's really a sense of shared ownership. We are much faster in gathering people for interviews, or bailiffs, for example. They have this like network of people and know exactly whom to speak to. And as Paul will talk about this later, but getting like in his talk about the triangle of success, getting users, experts, and the lawmakers together more closely is something that we're really working on in experimenting with these type of formats. And also to learn about each other's ways, because traditionally the people in the ministries and us who come from like the private sector, agile design world are very, very different cultures. And how can we build something new together is something that's really nice in these smaller projects. And how do we really become a team and have a shared ownership and responsibility for this together? So next, we want to try to work directly with the federal state, so the Ministry of Justice in a federal state, and develop something together with them. And how do we involve the other states then? So it's again a bit of a different setup. It's going to be quite interesting, I think. And we're also growing somehow, or we try to grow our legal impact. Like how do we how do we actually get into how the laws are being made? This is very interesting for us to explore. So after we learned about the 90% number, we got to talk to the ministry department that is responsible for legal aid, and this number and our research convinced them to actually change something about the paper form for legal aid, which was super, super awesome and exciting for us. And then after participating in research and seeing how the old form actually performs in user tests, they said they're now open to changing the law as well. So this was a journey, but they are also quite open to do this. And so last week in the retro, we got this sentence, which kind of almost broke melted my heart, I think, from a lawmaker. We need to collaborate earlier. First, the law needs to be simple, then the paper and digital form can follow. So this was like, oh, yes, thank you so much. And then they sent us a proposal for a law, which a lot of the law signs in it. And it's very, very exciting to be part of this. But how would it really work in practice, to be honest? Because changing laws in Germany takes a lot of time. It's like a year or longer to change this law. And we want to iterate fast, and we keep changing our wording, we keep changing the form, the digital one. Um, Creating a paper form, it's like it needs to go through all the 16 states and be kind of approved by everyone, and then it needs to be iterated again before it can even go live. So how do we deal with these completely different speeds and realities somehow is something that I think is really challenging now, and I would love to hear some advice from people. Um, we now hopefully will try to have like a testing clause in the law so that the new paper form can be tried for a couple of months before it has to be used. And I'm really wondering about like what needs to be defined in a law to work well in a digital and in a paper form, or what are like good ways to streamline paper form, because in Germany we want to keep the paper form. There are some people who always want to fill in a paper form and who need this, who depend on this, and also the oral application, of course. But how do we streamline these different ways, and how can we iterate in them simultaneously so that they're somewhat consistent? Yeah, so I'm very excited about this topic right now. And yeah, we've also been growing as a team. So in 2022, we started with just PMs, one developer and two designers, and our partner from the Ministry of Justice. And now we're actually two PMs, which is still too little. We have more developers. We have our own communications manager, which is awesome, someone who really helps us communicate and tell our stories. We have two transformation managers, which is a super important role in the context we're living in, because we're dealing so much with these different levels of administration. We have 4 designers now. This is really, really exciting. 3 user researchers, and we got the first content designer in the DigitalService also on our team, which is very exciting to work with. And also the team on the ministry side has been growing, so that's quite exciting. And we're working a lot on refining our structures and how we work, and we've tried how do we, I don't know, assign people to the different service streams, or do we work on features, or do we, what is it that we work on first? Like, what different ways are there to slice this onion that we've been talking about before? And how to do this well is something that we really want to know and would love to hear more from you about. So we've really come for advice, I think, from other states or people who have had experience with this, or ideas. Ideas are also very welcome. It feels a lot of the time like we're doing everything everywhere all at once, or we should be doing that. And what is it that is most important to do in a way? Yeah, but we've also learned a few things along our way before we get to questions. And that Sonja is going to speak about again.
Thanks, Marlene. We learned a lot, not only the 3 things we want to show to you, but there are some major learnings. It helped us also to reflect after working on this project for 2 years. So in the beginning, we were asking ourselves, is it really possible to participate on these different levels. And after 2 years, we can say participation across hierarchical levels is actually possible. It's possible if you define the structures, if you define formats, and it's also necessary to align on a shared vision, so everybody is following one goal, especially with the federal states, because there are 16, and if one is saying we don't want to work on this, then everything get blocked. So this is really possible if we get together and work together on these topics and define success together and define the vision together, then it's possible to move on and to grow and digitalize the legal application office. And also this collaboration model helped us to get reliable access to relevant people, the legal officers and the real users. This was a huge blocker in the beginning, especially when you want to work user-centered. You need the access to the users, and if you don't have it, it's just not possible. And it's a lot of work to get to the point you have the access, but once it's in place, it helps to really work fast and iteratively and in a user-centered way. And especially to meet these legal needs, because we have, on the one hand, the plain language we need to provide, and on the other hand, the legal constraints we really need to follow to get a language which is relevant to both, and also really get access to the user needs and understand them. And in the end, change through delivery, which is the strategy of the digital service, it's working. So after we provided measurable success and showed what are the real problems, we got the mandate to really work on other topics, like on the law, like on growing the team, on increasing the services, and also work on other services. And this was only possible because we were delivering very fast solutions which were measurable better than the paper form. And you can learn more about this from our CPO. She's giving a keynote speech at 4:30, I think, about the strategy change through delivery. And this really helped to transform minds. We got one quote from a person from a court who was saying, "This is real digitalization, what's happening here. It's not just digitizing paper forms." And this was really, really cool to hear for us, and helped us to also explain why we need to work user-centered and put the user needs into the middle. Cool. Thank you for listening and taking the time. I know this was like 2 years.
And not so much air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have questions? Shall I open the challenge?